My name is Everett Butts. I was born in 1924, January 18, 1924. I served in the military. I enlisted so that I could choose my own service. My brother had already been drafted. He told me, if you want to choose your service, you got to volunteer. I knew that. He recommended that I join the medical department of the Army. It was August, he was drafted. It was October, less than 6 months when I went in. And I can't remember the year, but I was 18 years old. I was a medic, and eventually I made buck sergeant. The unit went to Europe, and I went with it, and I'm glad I did. We were a medical clearing company, and that's the third station back from the medical service in the Army. You have field people, you pick them up, that's A company, and you get them out of the fighting area. And the next is a first aid station. They go to somewhere they'd be safe. You're never ever completely safe because they could always drop a shell in. And it makes it sound like a big load of lumber being dropped. We were a C company, which is first serious surgery, amputations, whatever's necessary. Wherever we were, we took, if we were set up. Now, one time we were all packed ready to move, and we got a whole load of patients. And one was given to me to take care of. And there were some guys in the back of a GI truck, and the truck shipped off the road and rolled over, and these people got hurt, seriously. So I had one with a brain injury, and I was in the sack, just he and I in the back of a truck, and nothing I could do. Nothing I could do. He was kind of out of his mind, raving, and this terrible situation.
If there was one thing, one message you could give today's teenagers about being a veteran, what it means to be a veteran, what would you say to today's teenagers?
Do your best to stay alive so you could take care of the troops and the civilians. If it was necessary, we took care of Germans, we took care of Belgians, and we did the routine of our own troops.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My fellow soldier and I are here today to render the final military honor to a fallen comrade. The military honor will consist of playing of taps, unfolding, refolding, and presentation of flag. During the playing of taps, we ask those who physically able to, please stand, place your hand over your heart. Any current and former military service member may render a proper hand salute. At the conclusion of taps, you may be seated for the folding and presentation of flag. The military honor will now begin. Please rise. Thank you.
Greetings of peace, and welcome to Sierra Foothills Unitarian Universalists congregation. I'm Reverend Alex da Silva Soto. My pronouns are they and them. I'm wearing a dark green stole with colorful little circles and the words Black Lives Matter. And I'm also wearing a black and white Palestinian keffiyeh. We join in empathy and solidarity with Everett's family, Mike Butts, Bruce Locker, Diane Eisman, Jen Butts, Arthur, Sue, and Gary Butts, Brad Nistrom, Gail Litzus, David Nistrom, as well as Everett's chosen family, church family, and friends. We humans have sensed the mystery of death and the pain of grief since time immemorial. And so we acknowledge the value of death by marking the passing of one we love. May we be granted grace that in mourning we may find comfort, in sorrow, hope, in death, life eternal. However you may define that.
There is an old man called the Mississippi. There's an old man I don't want to be. What does he care if the world's got troubles? What does he care if the land ain't free? Old Man River, that old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling, he keeps on rolling along.
You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with pain, tote that barge, lift that bale. You show a little grit and you land in jail. I keep laughing instead of crying. I must keep fighting until I'm dying. But Old Man River, he just keeps rolling along. Many of you know that this was one of Everett's favorites, so we had to have it. And it's from Showboat, written for the American singer and actor Paul Leroy Robson. And here's some information for those that may be unfamiliar with the work of Paul Leroy Robson. Mr. Paul Robson was a political activist, and I'm quoting here, political activist for the civil rights movement. Although Robson achieved artistic and financial success, the Spanish Civil War effectuated the deprecation of his commercial career in order to proselytize against fascism and social injustice. Consequently, his advocacy of anti-imperialism and affiliation with communism and his criticism of the US government would bring retribution and public condemnation during the age of McCarthyism. But he remained unapologetic for the unpopular political stances he took in his life, which made him a virtual social outcast. End quote. Everett knew all of that. And he taught this very congregation about it. The original last verses are, I get weary and sick of trying. I'm tired of living and scared of dying. But that old man river, he just keeps rolling along. Those were the original words. But the words I read, the last verse, I keep laughing instead of crying. I must keep fighting until I'm dying. But Old Man River, he just keeps rolling along. Everett sang the verses I just read, which were adapted by Paul Robeson as he joined the Sydney Opera House construction workers' strike. Everett knew that, and he was very proud to have sung the workers' strike version in this very spot that I'm standing on right now. And he did it at a Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s celebration. So here's a short clip of Mr. Paul Robeson singing additional verses for the workers at the Sydney Opera House.
I never died, says he. In Salt Lake City, Joe says I, him standing by my bed. They framed you on a murder charge, says Joe, but I ain't dead. Says Joe, but I ain't dead. And standing there as big as life, and smiling with his eyes, says Joe, what they can never kill, went on to organize, went on to organize. From San Diego up to Maine, in every mine and mill, where working men defend their rights, it's there you'll find Joe Hill. It's there you'll find Joe Hill.
The opening hymn is My Life Flows On in Endless Song. It's number 108. If you read music, we have some hymnals on those window seals, but the words are on the screen as well. I invite you to stand if you can comfortably so, or stand in spirit.
Flows on the song of a first lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love prevails in heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing when tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing? Rejoice both far and near. How can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
We are blessed this afternoon to hear from Susan Chalpin offering the eulogy, also with Gary Van Landingham.
Everett Butts, born January 1924, died August of 2023. Everett was a proud native Californian. He approached life with caring curiosity in people and nature. Everett and Marilyn migrated from Sacramento to Lincoln, where they designed and built their dream home on 10 acres. Everett was in love with his family, the land, his garden, and passionate about native plants. The Lincoln property was a showcase of native plants and the bountiful garden Everett planted and shared. Everett was very erudite and a prodigious reader. He extensively read about native peoples and reveled in intellectual discourse. He also loved the Sierras. He wrote of his time at his Sierra County property, "I rediscovered after many years how much of the rest of the world I can do without." And described his time in the mountains as high quality, low input sensory experience. Everett was enchanted with the simple beauty and majesty of the mountains. He possessed an unjaded innocence that was untainted by the travails of life.
Told Sue I had read that before I was going to read mine, and after those last few sentences she shared about Everett, I don't think I need to read anything, but I will. I knew Everett for about 27 years. I was honored to learn that Everett wanted Sue and I to give the eulogy at this service, and I have to admit I've kind of struggled the last couple of weeks of how to put Everett's life in words that will give an accurate description of the man we all knew and loved. And Sue did an excellent job in those last few sentences, like I said. But I'm going to read these. I first met Everett in 1996 when our mutual friend Sue invited me over for a visit to a cabin above Sierra City on Highway 49. She told me she thought I might like to meet a friend of hers, and that friend turned out to be Everett. Everett was there with his wife, Marilyn. Thank you. And Sue was right. I did enjoy meeting Everett. That meeting involved, and to me, working for Everett on his land near Downeyville. Everett, Marilyn, and their son Jonathan had bought 160 acres on New York Ravine. That's in between Downeyville and Sierra City a few years earlier. Jonathan passed away at a young age in 1995, and Everett wanted to take care of the land, not only because he loved his piece of the Sierra, but to also honor the memory of his son. During this same period and continuing for many years, Everett and Marilyn devoted their lives and resources to the Marfan Foundation to better educate the medical community and public to the symptoms and dangers of that condition. I was living in the Gray Eagle area at the time, working for the Forest Service, so Everett would tow his fifth wheel up from his home down on Mount Pleasant Road and camp out for the weekend with Marilyn, and I would drive the 30 miles or so over from Gray Eagle. Everett was at the age of 72, but he was still more than capable of hard work and would work alongside of me, piling slash or pruning branches as I thinned the understory. Marilyn would take walks around the camp, read, and write letters. In 1999, I moved to Susanville to return to teaching. So now, instead of being 30 miles from the property, I was 130. So our working relationship changed as to how often we could get together to work on what we now call John's Mountain. Everett's wife, Marilyn, died in 2000. So now at 76 years of age, he faced living alone in the wonderful house he and Marilyn had built together on their 10 acres on Mount Pleasant Road down by Lincoln. That house and land was Everett's pride and joy, and there was no way at that time that he was going to leave it. Everett had many friends from this church and other friends from his activities with native plant societies and other folks from the area he lived in. He kept in contact with relatives in other parts of California and Idaho, and he continued to research the Butts family history, something he did through the end of his life. I would go visit during the summer on our break from school and help him around the house and 10 acres. It was during this time I learned much more about Everett, his early life growing up in the Bay Area, and time spent with cousins, aunts, and uncles living on ranches and farms. These were some of his favorite memories and the source of his love of the rural life. I learned of his time in the Army as a medic arriving in Europe 18 days after D-Day at the age of 20. His brother Gordon served on the hospital ship Comfort and was on ship when it was struck by a Japanese plane with people being killed and injured. Everett had many such memories as these, which developed in him a great reverence for life of all kinds. He was convinced that the most important thing in life were the relationships you have with other people. He loved nothing more than being surrounded by friends and family and having good conversations and learning about and from each other. Somewhere around 2000 or so, we began an annual camping work trip to Johns Mountain, where we would camp out for 3 or 4 nights and continue our work on the land. Everett met a couple from Nevada City, Faustin and Kathy. They're here today somewhere. There they are. Who had done forestry work, and they became an invaluable part of the team, especially when Kathy took over the cooking duties from Everett after a few trips. We would set Everett up in his canvas tent with a cot, and for one trip in the fall, we even had a small wood heater to keep the tent warm. Well into his 80s, Everett would do work alongside of us as we thinned along the roads and old skid trails and made piles of slash that Kathy and Faustin would return to burn in the wet season. I believe our last trip was in 2016 after Everett had moved to Auburn. By that point, he would stick around camp, read one of the many books he was reading, or writing one of the beautiful letters he would write. Everett thought the trips to Johns Mountain were some of the best times of his life, next to the time spent with family on those ranches and farms and the years with Marilyn and Jonathan. Selling that house and property on Mount Pleasant Road was one of the hardest decisions Everett made. But by 2016, now in his 90s, it was becoming too difficult for him to maintain. Most importantly to him was that he wanted to be closer to friends and his church here in Auburn. Everett spent the final years of his life in his Auburn house, surrounded by the books he loved, and visiting with friends like Dan Zierkowski, Joe Medeiros, Virginia Daines, and many others I never had the opportunity to meet. His nephews would come visit, and his nephew Bradley was a great help to Everett. During the last 3 years of Everett's life, he had 3 wonderful caregivers: Debbie Dragon, Kay Helms, and Kat Hedden, who provided much help and laughter for Everett. One of my favorite memories with Everett was during one of my visits here to Auburn, I believe last spring. Dan had come by to visit Everett, and he had brought along his guitar. Kay and Kat were there, and Everett loved nothing more than being able to show off his great singing voice. He had a wonderful smile on his face and that Everett twinkle in his eyes. In closing, I'd like to share one last thing that I think kind of summarizes Everett's approach to life. Sometime along the way, in those 27 years I knew Everett, and I don't remember exactly when it was, though I know it was after Marilyn had died, I noticed a coffee cup on a shelf, or maybe it was on top of the refrigerator at his house in Mount Pleasant. The coffee cup said Psalm 118:24 on it. I asked Everett about it, and he said Marilyn had given him that, and several years went by before he realized it was because his birth date was 1/18/24. I later looked up the verse, and it's the verse, "This is the day which the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." Knowing Everett, he might argue with me about that first sentence, that it was the day the Lord had made, but I know for a fact he always rejoiced with every day. Every day was a gift, and he loved having it. Thank you for listening, and as Everett would often tell me when he ended our phone conversations, be kind to yourself.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Gary.
Cheery about this because this is a big event.
Sure.
Let me get my emotions straightened out. Let's go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, Shenandoah, I love your daughter. Away, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to hear you. Away. Bound away across the wide Missouri. The old Missouri is a mighty water. Away, you rolling river. The people camp along her border. Away, we're bound away across the wide Missouri. Oh, Shenandoah, I'm bound to leave you. Away, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I'll love to see you. Away, we're bound away across the wide Missouri. Is there more?
We just repeat that line, remember?
Across the wide Missouri.
Yes. Shenandoah was another one of his favorites, and I'm really happy that we have this recording. It was his 99th birthday, and which actually means he was living into his centenarian year, right? So, and just this last week, we celebrated Everett entering into 101. So deep gratitude to Barb Munn for working diligently on editing videos and compiling the photos at the beginning of the service and at the end as well. Deep gratitude to Deb Dragon, Kelly Chandler, and Patty Leffridge, Vicky Jungers, Joyce Sanders for making the service possible and as honorific as we could and celebratory as we could. And I got to meet Suzanne Ferrogiardo via email, and she's been very instrumental as well in bringing all these pieces together so we can see this beautiful garden that is Everett's life. And Suzanne is coming forward to offer us some of her thoughts.
Teary-eyed indeed, Everett. For many years, Everett endeared himself to me and my family. Everett, heartfelt singer from the soul, uniquely genuine, deeply connected to the land, plants, and animals wherever he was. Like Susan and Gary were saying. Non-stop storyteller. Creative sense of humor, caring always about people and good health. Contemplative. Everett, detailed attention to accurate history. Here at SFUU in the late 1990s, Everett and I patiently worked together to create the Maidu culture lessons for the RE children's classes. has been mentioned, Everett was a plant lover, enchanted with native plants. In the 70s and 80s, way before the curve, he created Wapumni Nursery on his ranch in Lincoln. He influenced Ann Fisher Chandler to start her Cornflower Farms nursery that she and husband Jeff have made wildly successful. Ann and Everett also encouraged John Anderson at Hedgerow Farms, receiving a plaque of honor from California Native Grasslands Association. I can still see Everett at our Grass Valley home closely inspecting our patch of ground cover, Salvia sonomensis, on his hands and knees when he was 84. Everett was my native plant mentor too, and I'm touched and honored that he gifted me his old Jepson native plant manual. Naturally, when he moved to Auburn, which he planted natives in his impossible cement soil, which of course miraculously grew into lush beauty. On the first picture showed his beautiful lupin. Everett, child of the earth, as he referred to himself, radiated peaceful joy with friends on his botany soiree at Johns Mountain. I was there to help him do a survey of native plants. 160 steep acres near Downeyville, and then he generously deeded it to Bear Yuba Land Trust. Everett, circle of friends around him again, legendary three-ring circus pancake breakfasts at his ranch, enticing aromas, sourdough pancakes from scratch on his wood-burning stove, bacon, ham, pork chops, homemade muffins, stewed prunes, and baked apples. Finally eating breakfast in the early afternoon as he reveled in conversation around the table and then proudly toured us around his plants. Everett, creative humorist. This was his 2007 Christmas card, and in it says, quote, "This is left blank to allow room for all the things that didn't happen in 2012 and all the things that did happen, both categories too full to record here. Use your imagination. Good luck. As ever, Ev." With all these sweet memories, Everett's unique, endearing character will always be held close in our family's hearts.
Of Everett in his front yard. His garden is right here by the chalice. At the end of the service, if you'd like to come forward and see some of these items, including a little ladle for pancakes. And Brad Nystrom is also going to offer some remarks this evening, memorializing his uncle.
Yes, I was Everett's nephew on Marilyn's side. I was there when he and Marilyn got married. I was 9 then, so as you can imagine, we knew each other a long time. That day is one of the most vivid of my memories from my childhood. The wedding was in some old mansion in Berkeley, and the Butts kids were there. Mike over here is one of them, and we had the best time running around like, were you there too? And what's your? I'm Jan. You're Jan. Yeah. Nice to meet you, Jan. Do you remember that day? I do indeed. Yep. Anyway, the parents had a hard time calming us down to come in and witness the wedding. Any case, well, as we know now, some of the Butts family are here. Anyone else? Oh, are you Kimberly? Yeah. So, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Okay. Okay. There are 3 Butts family members who are watching virtually, and I just want to greet them Diane Eisenman, Everett's niece, Joanne Bauer, and Barbara Powell. All three are very dear to Everett. We're glad you're here. You know, the things that are important to us say a lot about who we are. And so I'd like to just say a little something about some of the things Everett thought were important. Of course, at the top of the list were Marilyn and Jonathan, but I want to focus more on, you know, Everett's recent years. First, I think Everett did a good job of letting many of us know that we as individuals were important to him. Even when I was a little kid, he'd take me aside and ask me what I thought about one thing or another. That was unusual in those days, you know, for adults to take kids seriously. And over the years, he kept on asking me. Of course, he also told me what he thought, and I'll put it delicately by saying, I think he did so in somewhat greater detail, you know. Well, fair enough. The main thing is I always knew that Everett cared about me, that I was important to him. Everett's family was very important to him. Not just existing family, although they certainly were, but also earlier generations. He talked endlessly about them. Sometimes I thought, you know, he lived more in the past than in the present. And I got to know big portions of the family trees, you know, the Butts and other families in Everett's ancestry. He admired the lives and the values of his ancestors who lived in what he called the Joaquin. San Joaquin was going a little too far for him. So the Joaquin, he liked to say, sort of looking carefully to see if you noticed. They seemed, I think, to him more honest, more noble, you know, than perhaps than people today. While the rest of us want to have the newest of everything, Everett was much more interested in preserving his past and his life. I'll give you just one example that a lot of you are familiar with. Do you remember the cast iron stove, you know, in the Lincoln property? It was all I and others could do to dissuade him from not moving that to Auburn, you know, and punching a hole in the roof, you know, for the chimney. A lot of you know, I suppose, that even in his 90s, Everett wanted to remarry. He wanted that kind of companionship. There was a time when he and I discussed computer dating together.
All right.
But he didn't have a computer. So he didn't get that kind of attention. But he did have 5 wonderful caregivers who were very, very important to him. It wasn't easy sometimes, I know, but these 5 women, Debbie, Kay, Susan, Bernadette, and Catherine, gave him much of the kind of love that he was looking for. They kept his house in good order, of course, but I'm sure they spent most of their time focused on him, which was, I'm sure, the way, you know, he wanted it. Talking about things that really mattered. You know, no cell phones allowed for the most part, no television. You know, he liked meaningful conversation, meaningful relationships. Almost every time I visited, maybe every time I visited, I found him happy. I've typed this out as in capital letters, happy. Sometimes beaming. And why? Because Debbie, Kay, Susan, Bernadette, and Catherine were there, right? They, you know, gave him a good portion of all the happiness that he had in his later life. And there was a lot. And then there were the members of this church. Many of you became dear friends of Everett, and Everett loved coming here on Sundays. My parents, when I was a kid, or no, after I'd left the house, I guess, my parents used to give a ride to church to an old lady way into her 90s. Her name was Emma Lofstrand. She was nearly blind and had, tremendous difficulty hearing anything. And my dad, a nice man who had great potential for tact still, once asked her, Emma, you can't see really very well. You can't hear. Why do you go to church? What do you get out of it? And she told my dad, it's the feeling I get there. It's the feeling. I told Everett this story once, and he said, yes, he too had the feeling when he was here. I think you, the members of this church, have been just absolutely amazing in your loving friendship, in your attention to Everett, your care for him in every respect. So I think it's very appropriate that Everett's memorial service is here, right, at a place he loved. And I know that Everett would want you to know how grateful he was for you, all of you, and for all that you gave him.
Many of the things Everett did had a large impact on the growing native plant industry and contributed to restoring native plants in California. But there is one main theme that guided him through his life: follow your dream.
With changes imperceptible, life perfects its dream. Like mountains piled high with snow, its slopes become a sheen. May yours unfold and insist to grow until with bulwarks white, all your thoughts and all your deeds are with your dream set right.
Everett was a wonderful role model to folks of all ages, and we are really blessed this afternoon to not only see Devin Wogart's work back when you were a young human. You continue to be a young human, but a man now, so we welcome you to come forward. Please share the lessons you've learned.
Hello, everyone. That was me in 8th grade, I think. I've known Everett, I think, about as long as I can remember. My mother reminded me this morning, I think I was 4 years old when I met him, back when the church here was still over in the school in Bowman. And I have many fond memories of him here, and giving talks to the kids down in youth group, and just making conversation after the service and before the service. And then when I was in high school, he gave me my first real job, I guess. I went and worked for him out on the property in Lincoln, helping him maintain the native ecosystem there, and get my notes out. And even though a lot of the time there was spent looking for something that he misplaced, or or listening to him tell his stories, he was always too generous, almost to a fault, and insisted on paying me way too much for my work there, despite how much I tried to convince him. And he always wanted to do things the right and proper way, whether that was making sure all of my tax withholdings got done properly for a job that I think anyone else would have paid me under the table for, and and making sure that I got my 2 15-minute breaks and my half-hour lunch break. And going forward with the generosity theme, he always was so happy and enthusiastic to share any books or items or anything connected to his stories that he could show me when we were eating lunch in his house. And while I was there, I learned what everyone has talked about so far, his passion for the land and for the native ecosystem here in California. And it was very nice experiencing that firsthand, you know, pulling out blackberries and planting seeds and all that kind of thing. And I learned a lot there listening to him and just working with him even when he wasn't talking. And and I think that he really believed that how do I put this? He really wanted to pass down everything that he had learned, I think, to not just younger people like me, but I think everybody. And as someone who is a person, sorry. And he was someone who lived through a lot of what we would consider history now. And history has become one of my favorite things to learn about. And I think that Everett was instrumental in helping to inspire that interest. And he'll help to show me that that history is just stories told by people about other people. And as he used to love to say, and like I heard many times a day working for him, so be it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
My name's Patty, and I had the pleasure of playing piano for Everett for a lot of years. It doesn't seem to be on.
It was.
Okay, once again, my name's Patty, and I had the pleasure of playing piano for Everett for well over a decade. And one time we talked about the afterlife, and at that time he felt that when he was dead, it was over and done. And I'm like, well, you know, I feel the spirit lives on, it floats around, and no, when we're dead, we're dead. And I'm like, okay. After he passed, I did have to, you know, look up and go, I was right. Maybe I wasn't, but I had a good laugh at that. He and mine and his, he and I, our relationship was a lot of synchronicity, a lot of odd coincidences that really connected me with a man 40-some years older than me. When he first came over my place of employment to work on a song for church, he saw something on my wall and he said, oh, I've been there. And I'm like, what do you know? You haven't ever. My daughter, she lives in Belgium, in this little teeny, he goes, no, I've been there. My daughter lives in a town that he passed through when he served overseas. So, of course, when my daughter and my Belgian son-in-law came to the States, we went over Everett's house in Lincoln and shared photos of these places, and he recognized, well, his memory, we all know, was pretty strong, and he recognized so many of them, and my son-in-law's grandmother had been there and learned her English from American soldiers, and we were always trying to wonder if they had crossed paths. But that synchronicity carried on. And so once I found out he was a World War II vet, then of course in my job as a school teacher, someone's like, oh, I need a World War II vet to come to this event. And I'm like, I know one. And so he came and he did that little speech that we showed every student at E.V. Kane about 5-6 years ago. And it was just great. We had years of musical adventures, and in driving to church or sitting and doing songs, I got to know that same side I've heard all of you speak of, and it just, he was a character. Someone said that earlier. He was a character. He was one of a kind, and he will never be forgotten by the people here. He will never be forgotten by me. Every day I see something that reminds me of him. I also have a grandson named after him in Belgium right now, named Everett Mirage. So, but I will remember him until the day I die, because things keep popping up. And just this morning, a poem popped up on Facebook. I wasn't researching what to say here, and I thought, Everett, you're talking to me again. So I just want to share it with you, and then if you have a moment after the service, ask Debbie Dragon about her earrings. Everett, you're here, I know you are. So here's the poem. When you remember me, it means you have carried something of who I am with you, and that I have left some mark of who I am on who you are. It means that you can summon me back to your mind, even though countless years and miles may stand between us. It means that if we meet again, you will know me. It means that even after I die, you can still see my face and hear my voice and speak to me in your heart. For as long as you remember me, I am never entirely lost. Frederick Buchner. So be it.
Hi, I'm Joe Medeiros. I'm a retired Sierra College professor and a longtime friend of Everett's since I came to Sierra College in 1990. We connected early, probably at the California Native Plant Society somewhere in the Sierra Nevada, most likely, in California. And as many of you know, Everett was a real fan of California native plants and their cultivation. He started a native plant nursery, named it Wapumni, and was quite successful in cultivating difficult perennial natives like quaking aspen and mahalamat. Everett cultivated a beautiful blazing red fuchsia, and it became well known as Everett's Choice in the trade. It may be planted in your very own yard. Everett surrounded their beautiful pole barn home in Lincoln with both rare and common showy flowering shrubs and lots of annuals. The landscape was riotous in spring displays. He even delved deeply into the very difficult to grow California native grasses, understanding their needs for both mild grazing and occasional ground fires. He recreated a native grassland ecosystem, albeit on 9 acres on his Lincoln property. Leave it to Everett to deeply love both the showy and the obscure. As we became closer friends, Everett was taken with our work at Sierra College with students that were interested in environmental issues and the need for sustainability. He joined with us, the Ecos Club, Environmental Club, regularly at green festivals in San Francisco, and later on annual sustainability conferences at Chico State. As most of you well know, his passions were very broad. They spanned from environmental issues to social justice and racial equality. The Buttses bought 160 acres near Downeyville, high above the North Fork of the Yuba River, but for only a few years were able to work together, developing plans to establish a sustainable forest in the Sierra. With great efforts and lots of expenditures, Everett worked with many close friends, especially Kathy and Faustin and Gary, in an uphill battle, and it really was an uphill battle in many ways, to cut and thin and burn and do whatever they could to try to mimic Mother Nature's processes. With a great effort and a lot of money and lots of reports, John's Mountain, as Everett referred to the property, a conservation easement was arranged with the Nevada County Land Trust in 2002. In honor of John's efforts with the state of California and their combined interests in seeing that the property was perpetually conserved, this easement lives on. I could go on for a lot longer here, as many of you could, as our memories of Everett are plentiful and colorful, so I'll summarize here about Everett and Sierra College. Everett's extensive library was carefully organized and then he went and reorganized it. Virginia Danes tackled it and a good portion of it, and Everett's lovely group of caretakers continued to keep it from being reorganized by Everett once again. Mary leapt into service with her connections with the Friends of the Auburn Library, where so many books were graciously donated to one of Everett's favorite pastimes, reading. Other selected genre of books went to the UC Davis Herbarium Library, Sierra College Departments of Biology, Forestry, Native American Studies, Environmental Studies, and Sustainability, and to the Sierra College Press Archives. As you all know, Everett's interests were intellectual, erudite, abstract, multidimensional, political, social, religious, wandering, and often conflicted. But they are always just. In his 99 2/3 years, his interests continued to grow and grow. The last thing that Everett wanted to be seen as was lazy, unkempt, uninformed, inequitable, or politically conservative. So many of us labored over and again through 12 or more iterations and amendments to his trust, the portions of which I was involved included the gift of Johns Mountain and its conservation easements to the Bear Yuba River Land Trust. To Sierra College, Everett's generosity will result in the Everett, Marilyn, and Jonathan Butts Family Endowment with specific directions to environmental sustainability, equity, inclusiveness, and the Sierra College Press. Thank you for forgiving my absence today, and thank you all very much for being here. As you all must know, you meant the world to Everett. So, as Everett would often say to me at the end of an exhaustive monologue, that's the size of the pile. Thank you.
Most excellent professors and teachers are lifelong learners. And that's something I got to experience about and with Everett. Ministers and pastors are normally tasked, or some would say the highest priority or the most important job is to journey with folk. And being sort of a love doula, if you're familiar with that, it's to love on people and encourage them to love themselves and others. So I had the great privilege to have that dynamic with Everett. And in some very special occasions, a minister gets the privilege of journeying with someone as a death doula. And that is a difficult job, never easy, and it's never the same. And it's one of the most sacred jobs a minister can have. And there's some tools that we use, and one of them, there's a form that folks can fill out in the event of a minister being in the position of being a death doula with someone. And in such occasion like this, to address a congregation about a member of the congregation. So, live well so nobody needs to lie about you in your memorial service. And Everett didn't. He lived it out. And from one of those forms, here's some of his answers. For interests as a child, he responded, family, church, out of doors, reading good books. For interests as an adult, church, community, pioneer family. He's pioneering family here in California. For adjectives which describe your virtues, can you guess? Scholarly. And adjectives which describe your vices, hot temper. And he wrote those in very tiny letters. And there was one question, other things you wish mentioned. Spanish language from 7th grade. Oh, I had not read this form until he passed, but I got a little taste of his love for language because immediately upon meeting me and trying to figure out, a little bit about my background, which coincidentally has intersections and connections with Joe Medeiros. His family are Portuguese. I also have family from Portugal. But he was very intrigued, and he started to learn Portuguese. I've only been journeying with him for 2 years before he passed, but he felt it was a good investment of his time. Started learning Portuguese so he could communicate with me in my native language. That is an immense sign of curiosity and of love for the other. He was very tenacious, very strong, as you all know very well. And he got COVID at age 99. We were concerned. He beat that. He was so determined to get out of that goddamn hospital that he beat COVID at 99. He couldn't quite go back home. The needs that his body had was beyond what could be lovingly and capably provided. So he ended up at a place called Dad's Place. Coincidentally, a couple houses down from my home. So I had the great privilege and honor of having him as my neighbor and get to see him daily pretty much, and honor the privilege of the death doula role that a minister sometimes called to perform. And in those last weeks, he taught me, he blessed me with the opportunity to improve my Spanish because he would only speak to me in Spanish. And I just loved it. It was really, really incredible. So it was really a gift to have journey with Everett, and this is his walking stick, and this is his beloved wife. And if you're a member of this congregation, you're familiar with homework, which is also I think a responsibility of a minister is to encourage and entice people to self-reflect and to continue to learn. And one of the last exercises we had in-house, I was inviting everyone to reflect on what they wanted to commit for that next church year. And he took that seriously, and he wrote it. He wrote it down, what he was going to be working on for that year. And I think I have, that's the note. And if you can't read it from where you are, self-importance. Be more sensitive to others, to other persons in need. So that's what he committed to work on his last year here journeying with us. And I trust that all the stories he shared, all that he taught, was not only because sometimes he had a captive audience, but because he wanted to pass it on, all the gifts and all the lessons that were given on to him. And then Zurkowski got to journey quite closely with Everett, and he will bless us with some of his reflections.
Thank you, Alex. Closing words. I'm going to go off script just for a minute.
Go for
just
it.
Because when
Yes.
you were talking about Everett's temper, this memory came in. In all the years I've known Everett, there was only one time that I got to experience that, and I was helping him move. Most of his stuff was already moved out of the Lincoln House to Auburn. But I was helping him, and he was putting stuff in boxes, and stuff was non-functional, it was broken, it was pieces of stuff that was missing. And I would say, Everett, this stuff, what are you going to do with this? And he says, well, I don't know, but I'll find a reason to use it. So as I started pulling stuff out of boxes, because it was like completely junk, we got in a debate, and he got pretty heated about it. And he had some extension cords, and I said, Everett, let me show you why this doesn't work. And these extension cords, I just snapped them in half, and all the insulation blew off because it was so brittle. And he goes, well, so be it. Hi, my name is Dan Zierkowski, and I had the honor of having a long-term friendship with Everett. Everett, a true hero, was not only a World War II veteran, but a man who left an indelible mark on our lives and our hearts. I met Everett in the late 1990s and would cross paths with him through various church functions, viewing wildflowers at his Lincoln home, going out for breakfast, and of course attending his most popular Pancakes with Everett events with my family. When we moved to Auburn, I would visit him regularly. We talked about books he was reading, or he would tell me a story about his family, or some other pertinent historical event. Sometimes I played the piano, guitar, or harmonica for him and enjoyed our connection through the universal language of music. Everett, like so many of us, struggled to understand the human condition and the events that shaped his life. Everett's life journey included the shores of Normandy, Utah Beach to be exact, where he landed during World War II. He faced the challenges of war with courage and resilience, contributing to the fight against fascist forces of that time. The importance of that fight stayed with him and was the subject of his personal story for the Vote Forward letter writing campaign that he participated in during the 2020 election cycle, encouraging people to speak out and let their voices be heard in the ballot box. Beyond the battlefield, Everett's passion for science and nature shone brightly. He held a deep love for California native plants, as you've been hearing, finding solace and beauty in the natural world around him. As he cultivated this appreciation, he reminded all of us the importance of cherishing and preserving the environment that sustains us. Everett's heart also resonated with indigenous cultures. He felt a profound connection to their traditions, wisdom, and respect for the earth. His openness and appreciation of diverse perspectives enriched his understanding and the world that deepened his sense of unity for all people. As you have heard, Everett loved books. During the last year of his life, Everett would cite Margaret Craven's "I Heard the Owl Call My Name," a story that follows a young evangelical, I knew I was going to do that, Anglican vicar named Mark Bryan, who is sent to a remote Native American village in British Columbia. Mark, unaware of his terminal illness, soon learns the ways of the people and their spiritual connection with nature. As he immerses himself in the community, he experiences the richness of their culture, confronts his own mortality, and forms a deep connection with the villagers. This story captured Everett's sentiments beautifully, including his recognition that he himself, without fear, was knocking on the door of the great unknown. I would like to share some words from this book. The Indian knows his village and feels for his village as no white man for his country, his town, or even his own bit of land. His village is not a strip of land 4 miles long and 3 miles wide. That is his as long as the sun rises and the moon sets. The myths are the village, the winds and the rains. The river is the village, and the black and white killer whales that herd the fish to the end of the inlet to better gobble them up. The village is the salmon who comes up the river to spawn. The seal who follows the salmon and bites his head off. The blue jay whose name is like the sound he makes, squisk, squisk. The village is the talking bird, the owl who calls the name of the man who is going to die, the silver-tipped grizzly who ambles into the village, and the little white speck that is the mountain goat. This is the village. It has always been easier here, where there only the fundamentals count, to learn what every man must learn in this world. Enough of the meaning of life to be ready to die. I can believe in the end, Everett got his wish and he heard the owl call his name. As we say our goodbyes, let us carry forward Everett's spirit of resilience, love of nature, diverse appreciation of diverse cultures, dedication to community, and honoring his memory in a way we may find inspiration to live our lives with that same courage, kindness, and unwavering commitment for a better world. Rest in peace, dear Everett Butts. Your legacy will forever echo in our hearts. And as I conclude my remarks, I would be remiss if I did not end by quoting Everett, "Be kind to yourself," and cheers.
Yes, thank you, Barb. And thank you, Dan, for playing with Everett as often as you both could. So the closing song is for the Earth Forever Turning, but before we sing, I want to once again invite you to not only take a look at some of the items we have here on the altar, but some memorabilia that are right there in the table in the back. And you are invited to take a little packet with you of red bud seeds, and we invite you to plant them in Everett's memory. There's also the sourdough pancake recipes in the credenza that you can take with you and hope you bake some bread and savor it. And there's also one Everettism in your little packet, but the full list is in the credenza as well. And we invite you to continue to benefit from the pearls of wisdom from his long letters and cards. And after the service, we'll have some carrot cake. That was Everett's favorite as well, and continue this exchange of stories and lessons that we benefited from Everett. Yeah, let's honor him. Let's sing.
For the earth forever turning, for the skies for every sea, for our lives, for all we cherish, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the sun, for rain and thunder, for the seasons' harmony, for our lives, for all creation, sing we our joyful praise to Thee. For the world we raise our voice,
when his boat snapped loose from its mooring under the squeaking of the gulls, he tried at first to wave to his dear ones on shore. But in the rolling fog, they had already lost their faces. Too tired even to choose between jumping and calling, somehow he felt absolved and free of his burdens. Those mottos stamped on his name tag, conscience, ambition, and all that caring. He was content to lie down with the family ghosts in the slope of his cradle, buffed by the storm, endlessly drifting. Peace, peace, to be rocked by the infinite, as if it didn't matter which way was home, as if he didn't know he loved the earth so much he wanted to stay forever. Amen. Salam, shalom, blessed be. And so be it.
Okay, now the last verse. Here we go.
I'd like to sleep my last long sleep. Mother Earth forbid. Myself for a pillow. The bright stars overhead. That I could hear the last stampede. The songs of rivers sing. Way back down in Texas, when they round up in the spring, I can see the cattle grazing over the hills at early morn. I can see the campfire smoking at the break of dawn. I can hear the broncos neigh. I can hear the cowboys sing. I'd like to be in Texas when they round up in the spring. When they round up in the spring.